Hey everyone, I'm Airwingmarine. Welcome back to the channel, my next Escape from Tarkov video. We're going to do another loot guide, and I know it's been a while, but being late wipe, there's less swings and stuff, and there's less and less things to talk about. And I don't like making videos just for the sake of making videos. There's got to be good content there. But now we have some things to talk about, so let's jump right into it. So for those of you new to the channel, this guide is based on one rule, 12.5k rubles per slot. I draw that line so I don't have to remember exact prices of items. With almost 2,300 items in the game now, I aim to think of things as yes or no, loot or don't loot, with a few maybe sprinkled in there. So that 12.5k rule is the line I draw. If it's worth more than that, I keep it. If it's worth less than that, I don't. And that's pretty much it. All right, quickly, we're going to hammer out a few things you should keep no matter what. This is meant for newer players or players that don't play all that much. These aren't question marks. There's no changes in these. These things are always worth keeping. There's 3 quick words or a ditty or however you want to look at it that I use to always remember things that are worth keeping. It's gold military filter, okay? That isn't an item. That's the 3 kinds of things you want to keep. You want to keep anything that's got the word gold in it. So roller, submarine, gold watch, the skull, the gold skull ring, gold chain, the golden rooster, the golden 1G phone, and then the golden star. You know, it's kind of golden, whatever, but it's got the word gold in it. Those are all keep. You keep those no matter what. Same thing with military. So anything with the word military in it, you want to keep, all the way down to the military base checkpoint key. All of these things are worth a ton of money. They're worth keeping. You should usually stick them in your secure container, because even if you don't get out of raid with them, there's crafts with some of them where they're worth a bunch. Like if we go look at Therapist here, you'll see what I'm talking about. I mean, you can see 51,000, 25,000, 26 for a 2 slot, 90 for a 2 slot, 39 for a 2 slot. So all of these things are worth keeping, period. And then the other one is filters. It doesn't matter what it is. If it says filter, you should keep it. They're worth a bunch of money. Even these little green filters can be worth, 25, 30K. So they're worth keeping. Next up is gunpowders. Now I have the blue gunpowder in here just to show it. Your red and green gunpowders, you should keep these. The blues have recently dipped in price. I've told people to keep them in the past, but we're seeing them dip into like the 15 to 20K range now. So they just don't meet that 2 slot requirement. So I don't keep these anymore. But red and green, or the Hawk and Eagle gunpowders, for sure you keep. Intel items, or info items as it's called in the game. So this is SSD drives, SAS drives, thumb drives, both kinds of diaries, intelligence. These are all keepers. And one of the beautiful things about them is if you have a docs case, every one of these items will go in the docs case. So if you're in raid, all of this stuff takes up no more space than the 2 slots you've already got in your container. And flash drives can go in your SIC case too, just to keep that in mind. And then you've got your like super high-end items that you always want to keep. Things like optomoscopes, LEDXs, Tetrises, power banks, screws and bolts, OFZ shells, ratchets, fuels. All of these things are no-brainers. You keep them no matter what. You find them, you should be excited because they're worth a bunch of money. Now, we've seen an interesting twist in the economy in the last week or two, I would say, maybe a little bit longer. There seems to be more low-end level players coming into the game. Now, I don't know if this is brought on by the Punisher tournament. People saw it on Twitch and decided to come hop on and test the game out, or if it's, people resetting their accounts, or if there's just some random surge of new players showing up. But there's definitely new players. And what this means is the items needed at the low-level hideout are valuable again. You've got more and more people showing up and buying this stuff. So you've seen things we haven't seen worth a bunch in a while, like spark plugs start pushing the 15, 16K range. Same thing with wrenches. These things weren't worth much for a while. And right here, you're seeing 8 to 10, but these two kind of sit in their own little category. You pick them up, you sell them for 12.5, 13, they're always going to sell. But things like duct tape, this thing has gone through the roof. These things are pushing 20K all the time. And motors, again, were not worth picking up for a while, but we're seeing these things push 45, 50K. These are things that are worth picking up and selling for that 12.5 per slot. You just kind of got to watch it a little bit. But they're things that a lot of people skip over, so I wanted to bring them up. Some other items that you might be skipping over that I just want to bring up. You might not be, and that's great, but some items that might get passed up are things like classic matches. You find these in filing cabinets and jackets. These things are worth a bunch of money. They're used for the red gunpowder craft, and they go for anywhere from 15 to 20K regularly. Green batteries. These got a couple of barters for them, but they're always worth their weight or they're always worth their slot for sure. Now, toothpaste. This is used in the thick item case. So when people want to get thick item case, they got to buy a bunch of these up. They maintain their price pretty good. There's an orthodonto, and I think I got one down here somewhere. Yeah, this one here, don't pick this one up. This one's not worth anything. You got to pick up the green tube. They're real little to see. Paper. Now, paper, a lot of people skip over because for a long time, it isn't worth the money. And because of the time of day right now, it's kind of cheap. but this thing pushes 30K pretty regularly. This is a great item to pick up. Tea and coffee, actually both, but tea specifically. So tea is used in a couple of crafts, but it's a streamer item, but it's also it's also just worth it to the vendors by itself. So if you're seeing tea, you should pick it up because you can even sell it for 17.4, but I've seen it going for anywhere as 20 to 22 on the flea market, so it's worth it there. Now, your round frame sunglasses and your ski hat with holes for eyes, which it says Shmaska down here, but this is what you got to search on the flea market. These two items are used with the hex grid barter for Ragman, so they maintain a pretty good price. The round frame sunglasses, you're gonna have to sit on a little bit. They're worth sticking out. If you get them on your face, it's a free slot. Bring them out. You can sell them at whatever. But I like to hang on to them until I get 4 or 5 of them and sell them if I'm not even using them for the hex grid barter. But I can almost always sell them for 25 to 30K and make that good bit of profit. The ski hole with eyes are easy to sell. You can sell these things for 25 to 30K all day long. Just one of those items, don't try to put it on your head because you got to take your helmet off. Let me take these off. It doesn't go on the face covering. It goes on your head for whatever reason. So you got to make sure, just put it in your backpack. Don't try to wear it unless you're not wearing a helmet. Next up is food. So there's food items people might overlook. So big cans. So you got short cans and tall cans, right? I like to look at it as the tall cans. Keep tall cans. So your Tushunkas and your squashes. These things can fetch a hefty price. Tarcola has come down in price as of lately. I guess there's less people bartering for the Holodinks, but they're still worth that 12.5 to 15K range, so they're worth keeping. And then emergency water rations. These can actually be kind of hard to see in raid. They're pretty small, but they've got a pretty good price for a 1 slot. You can sell them from anywhere from 16 to 25K. That's kind of where I see them go back and forth. So I don't usually use them. I pick them up and get them out of raid. Now, the Amelia Rye croutons, this is one I want to talk about very in-depthly, if you will. And because you can see it on the flea market, and you'll see it list for 17, 18, 19K, you'll think, oh, that's awesome. That's great. We'll get that. Well, let me show you something. When I list this for 19K, it adds a 7,196 flea market fee. That's not bad. That's not bad for me. But the problem is I have a level 3 Intel Center and max hideout management skill, which means I have a negative 45% reduction. Let's grab our whiz-bang little calculator here, and let's figure out what you're going to pay if you don't have a level 3 Intel Center. So if you're not have a level 3 Intel Center, you're spending approximately 11,000 on your flea market. So even though you got it listed for 19,000, you're only making about 7.8, 7.9. So that's not worth it. And this only gets worse as the higher it gets up. That flea market fee really digs it in. So if you don't have a level 3 Intel Center, I wouldn't be picking these up unless you're using them for the barter for sugar with Jaeger. That's what's driving the value on these, is this barter right here. If you're going for that barter, fine, pick them up and keep them because it's cheaper than buying them. But if you're trying to sell these and you don't have a level 3 Intel Center, I would throw them out because the flea market fee is actually killing you on these. Now, moving down to weapon parts, there are far too many of these to really discuss. But there's a couple I want to bring out. There's 2 that have become real popular as of late, and that's these QRs 4.2 and 3.2 inch rails. Now, these go on the Troy handguard, and the reason that's become popular is because the Troy handguard is now the meta handguard for the 7.62 AKs. So when you look at it, you can see here there's none for sale. These things regularly sell for like 150,000. The 3.2 inch sell a little bit less because I think people don't need them as much, or maybe they're more common. I'm not sure. But you can see here they're still selling for 30 to 40K. Now, you'll find these in raids sitting on the ground. There's a bunch of different rails, but make sure you keep an eye out for this QARS. And the reason these are so expensive is because you got to have a level 4 mechanic to buy them. They don't come from anywhere else. So when you go into the mechanic here, this is where they're at. You got one there and one there, and that's it, level 4. So this is gate kept from anybody under level 40. Basically, or anybody even over 40 who hasn't done the tasks to get mechanic leveled up enough. So they're worth a bunch of money. If you find them in raid, they're worth keeping. And if you're trying to build a meta AK, that's usually the most expensive part, is buying these 2 things here. Now, 34 millimeter scope rings. I bring these up every time, but I feel like it's something I want to always mention. If you see 34 millimeter on any kind of scope ring, it doesn't matter which one. There are several. We'll go type here into the flea market and I'll show you. They are worth a boatload. So you've got 100K right here. Now this is huge. So when you find one of these things in raid, keep it. It doesn't do any good to put it in your secure container because it's only worth it on the flea market. But this is a real exciting thing to find. And if you're questioning whether you get out or not and you find one, just remember this can be anywhere from 100 to 150K depending on the time of day. They're worth a bunch of money. Now, recently they removed the ability to purchase these things. These are the D-Lock mounts. These are for the Reap IR scopes. So you got to buy them off the flea market or you got to do a barter. And you can see here, this guy's selling it for 200,000. I don't know if it'll sell. It might, but at the end of the day, you can sell these things for 100 to 200,000 pretty easily. even though there's a battery barter for 6 or is it 4 D batteries, you don't have to do it. And then lastly is this grip, this foregrip kind of barrel attachment thing. It's for attaching handguards to VSSs and ASVALs. This thing is worth a bunch of money as well. So it's gate kept behind a high-level trader, and people want to run VSSs or ASVALs and put a foregrip on them. They have to buy this. So it runs from anywhere from 100 to 150K. So those are all worth little pretty pennies if you want to find them in raid, places like reserve or in weapon boxes and stuff. Now, the next category is items that I pick up, but I throw out pretty quickly. And that's just because they can get that 12.5, 13, 14K sell range, but you got to work a little bit harder. You got to keep a bunch of them. You got to sell them in stacks. They do it maybe once a day or once every other day. And that is elite pliers, syringes, wires, and sodium. Now, I'm not saying don't pick these up. I'm just saying these are some of the first things I throw out to replace for more worthwhile loot, because they're kind of on the bottom end of that spectrum. But if you like picking them up, if there's something you like looting, by all means, go after it. Now, propane kind of falls kind of in the middle here. I have it here listed because it can be difficult to sell. It takes up a bunch of space in your inventory, but at the end of the day, it will sell for a bunch of money. We'll see what it's selling for right now. So we're selling for 50, 55K, right? That looks like it's worth it. Sometimes this drops down to 30K though, and other times it'll go all the way to 75K. It just kind of depends on the time of the day. And the reason is it's used for a couple of barters. And the biggest one, there's fuel barters, but the one that eats up a lot of them is the Red Rebel barter. So if somebody comes in and needs to do a Red Rebel or wants to barter for a Red Rebel, they need 15 of these things. So think about that. Somebody's going to buy 15. You're going to buy all the way down to somewhere about in here, right? So that's going to push the price up into over 70K when somebody comes in and buys the 15 they need. And you're already it looks like it just happened right now, because you see all these ones just disappeared and this thing went to 65K. So that's perfect. I didn't even plan it, and it worked out. I could show you guys how that happens. Somebody bought a bunch of these up and they get expensive. So that's just something to keep in mind for propane. If you're going to sell them, they're going to take up a little bit of inventory space, but they can be worth a bunch of money, even pushing 20K a slot. And then lastly is the stack of items you shouldn't be picking up. That I do see people, streamers, all sorts of stuff people pick up, and some of those guys don't care, and that's fine. I'm not being critical. I'm just trying to give you ideas of things that aren't worth it, in my opinion, for picking up. And that's cat figurines, clocks, horses, tool sets, chainlets. These things are not worth the slots. They barely scratch even 10K a slot for most of the time. A lot of them are far worse, 6, 7, 8K a slot. The battery is another one. You need these for a couple of tasks and hideout stuff, so if you're finding them then, great. At the end of the day, they're way a bunch. The early wipe, they're worth a fortune, but right now they're just not worth anything. And then lastly, tools. With the exception of ratchets, wrenchets, and elite pliers, none of the tools are really worth keeping anymore. With the changes to the graphic cards, even the old screwdrivers that were really, really reliable for a while, the regular screwdriver and the flat screwdriver, the little one slot red and black handle, even those things are worth less than 10K a slot now. So I pretty much just skip over most of the tools I find. I still search tool boxes because I'm still looking for my first ratchet. I have yet to find one, so I'm jealous of all of you that have, but that's kind of how Tarkov works. And then lastly, I kind of want to mention armor, right? So unless you have an armored rig, like an AACPC here, right, or a TV-110, these are worth picking up because you can stuff them full of loot and they actually make your container bigger because it has more spaces inside of it than it takes up outside. But armor like trooper armors, and I know everybody's like, well, I love the trooper armor for the barter, so buy it off the flea market. Those 9 slots, that means that thing has to be worth, 110K? If you can't buy troopers for less than 110K, which I'm pretty sure you can, then yeah, so it's just cheaper to buy it than it is to, especially if you uncheck operational only and you're getting these things cheaper, which there isn't any right now. They're probably bought up for the slick barter. But trooper armors, if it's not a slick or a hex grid or a armored rig, it's just not worth taking out a raid. In my opinion, with the slots and the weight it takes up and stuff like that, you can almost always find better loot. Maybe a Killa, depends on the durability and things like that, but I'll honestly skip most Killas myself just because I like looting, and I feel like that Killa takes up too much space in my bag. Now again, remember, this is based on my way of looking at it. I set that rule at 12.5K per slot. You're more than welcome to adjust it. You can go down to 10K. You can go up to 20K. At the end of the day, do what works best for you. Don't treat me like some all-knowing everybody. I've got a bunch of money, but I play a lot. So that's not necessarily an indication of what I'm doing is right. I'm just trying to give you guys a hopeful guide to help you out and kind of show you my thought process of going through things. So if that's helpful, make sure you hit that like button down below, and we'll do another one of these sooner than later. Well, that wraps up the video. I appreciate you watching. Make sure you hit that like button because it helps out the channel a bunch. And subscribe for future content. We also have a Discord, links down in the description, that you can come join. We're filling up with a bunch of chill people who just love to play Tarkov. If you're looking to support the channel in other ways, we've launched a Patreon with some benefits like access to a Discord channel, constantly updated spreadsheet for my hideout calculations, and some other things if you want to go check it out over there. Lastly, thanks for your support on YouTube. It means the world to me and I greatly appreciate every one of you. So with that, we'll wrap it up, and we'll see you in Tarkov.